Okay, comfy.
And now I'm going to mute us all for just a few minutes and do our introduction, and then we will begin. Remember, we are in the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, the book of holiness. And I told you when we began this course last semester that this book is all about how we live a holy life, how we Jews, or we as people, make it more general, how we are supposed to live a holy life. And let's review for just a moment. I realize I was going to talk a little bit more at first, but let's review just to make sure. Can anybody tell me, or does anybody remember what it means to live a holy life? How do we human beings, who are physical beings, who live in the physical world, who have bodies like other physical creatures, but also possess a soul given to us by God, how do we as human beings find holiness in the world we inhabit? Does anybody want to address that question to begin with? It's a review question. Anybody want to try it? How do we attain, or how do we discover holiness in the world? Nobody? Okay. All right. Okay. Neil, go ahead. How do we define, how do we as human beings find holiness in the world?
Are you discussing what you talked about, which was time, food, and relationships?
Exactly.
Okay.
In our first semester, we talked about holiness of time, holiness of place, holiness of diet, holiness of relationship, holiness of actions. But how do we find holiness? We human beings are physical beings, but we are also spiritual beings. How do we as physical beings, Neil, and that's the question to you, how do we discover holiness in our world? Yeah, I threw it to Neil, but I'll take anybody. Anybody want to tell me how we find holiness in the world? We physical beings, how do we discover holiness? Okay, Lori, go ahead.
Through the Torah?
Through the Torah. The Torah is an aid to help us, but the Torah is an aid that helps us find holiness. But how do we find holiness itself in the world? How do we find it? Marlene?
By practicing those things, by making sure we eat the things that we're supposed to eat,
Okay.
not eating the things that we're not supposed to practice the time that during the week that you know that you're supposed to rest, and treating people decently.
All right, so Marlene adds a component, not only through the Torah, but through studying the Torah and living in accordance with the values of the Torah. Marlene is saying not only studying, but trying to live in accordance with the Torah is the means by which we attain holiness. But ultimately, where do we find holiness in the world? I'm going to push it. Go ahead, Craig.
By performing mitzvahs.
Performing mitzvahs, but how does performing mitzvahs, Craig, help us to find holiness in the world?
We are what's the right word?
Doing something for someone else.
We're doing something for someone else, but we're allowing them to be better and us to be better. So effectively, we're mapping holiness ourselves onto other people.
Okay, so let's take everybody's ideas. We study Torah. In the Torah contains mitzvot, which teach us how to behave in a certain way. Craig says that in behaving in a certain way, it provides us with the way in which we can relate to the world in which we live and other people in the world through the performance of mitzvot. But ultimately, where do we find holiness in our world? Only one correct answer. Go ahead, Joseph.
I'd say being very deliberate in setting up a distinct way to bring God into our lives, find a place and a time and a way to bring him, communicate with him, have him with us, have him with yourself.
Very good. And Randy was saying the same thing. Holiness is meeting God. Okay, the goal of the Jewish people is to encounter the ineffable holiness of God, who once filled the entire universe, but then contracted and created a space for we physical beings. And our job is to bring God back into the world. Basically, the only thing we can confront in the world that brings us holiness is God. Whatever we do that brings us into an encounter with the creator of the universe, the one God, that is the source of holiness. And we can do it through days, times that we celebrate. We can do it through relationships that we have with family and with members of the community. We can do it through the way we eat. Basically, anything we do physically can become a vehicle for meeting God. The only way we get to holiness in this world, and I'm going to emphasize this, is by meeting God. If you do not meet God, you do not become holy in this world. The only essential, absolute holiness in the world is God. It's not human beings, it's nothing else. As I told you, God had to contract to make space for the physical world. Ultimately, before God created the world, God permeated everything. God filled everything. There was no space in the world that was absent of the presence of God. So Joseph reiterates what I try to stress, which is only when we encounter God in our day-to-day lives in this physical world, only at those moments can we encounter holiness. When we do not encounter God, when we live in the world as if God does not exist, when we do not connect with the spiritual, there is no holiness in existence, no holiness whatsoever. Okay? So last week I told you we're going to look for 3 different areas to find God. I said we're going to search 3 different things in an effort to find God and find holiness in this world. And the first thing I told you we were going to do we were going to confront time. How can we find God in time? Another question that's open to anybody who wants to ask. If holiness is the encounter, the meeting with God, how can we passively find holiness in time? Would someone like to explain that to me? Okay, Lori, go ahead.
By having Shabbat every week, by acknowledging and doing Shabbat and the holidays and
Good. Good. Yeah.
recognizing them and
That's yeah. Remember, everybody, if you're not on mute, everything you say can be heard. Yes, Lori, that is absolutely correct. By encountering God, okay, we discover holiness. And we can encounter God, as Lori says, through Shabbat and through holidays. But in order to encounter God through Sabbath and holidays, you have to do it in the right way. A lot of you may feel that you encounter God all over the place, but the truth is, unless you devote special attention and time and effort, you will not find God in time unless you make space for him. Where is God? God is everywhere you make a place for him. God enters the world wherever you create a place for him to enter. If you do not create a place or a moment or a time or an experience, if you do not bring God into the world, God will not appear to you. I sent you before tonight a little calendar. I'm going to share it with you now. And we can talk about it. I'm going to do a little sharing. Let's see here. Screen here.
Yeah, to share, right?
Yeah, share screen. Yeah, okay. And let me hit the
okay.
And share.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
Once you see everybody's picture.
Okay, and I'm waiting to see everybody's picture.
They're up now.
Did you all receive this in the mail? Okay. Thank you to Wikipedia for providing me with this list. I could not have generated it without Wikipedia. There are certain things that Wikipedia is great at. And if you need comprehensive lists that cover everything, you Google like I did, lists of religious holidays in the world today, and you can get a complete list of the holidays. Take a look at the holidays for just a second. You'll notice that it starts with what are called Abrahamic holidays. That just means the holidays of the three major religions that follow the tradition of Abraham: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Jews, Christians, and Muslims all believe that Abraham is our spiritual ancestor. And therefore, if you look at the list, you will see a list of the holidays in each of the religious traditions. I'm going to show you. Take a look at the Jewish holidays. Okay, you see, everybody see the Jewish holidays. You will see about 9 or 10 different holidays. There are other holidays, but these are the major holidays. These are the major holidays of the Jewish year. We call these the main or the traditional Jewish holidays. Okay, and you find all of the traditional holidays. You find the Sabbath there. You find the 3 pilgrimage festivals, the festivals of Passover and Shavuot and Sukkot. You find the high holidays there, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You find what are called the minor holidays, which are minor only because they don't appear in the Torah, Purim and Hanukkah. These are all the holidays of the Jewish year. I can't give you a list bigger than this list. It doesn't exist. I could give you some fast days. I could throw in some fast days for you. That would make it a little bigger. I could throw in some really minor holidays, but I won't do that. These are the major Jewish holidays. Now, those of you who are looking at this list and who are Jewish, how many of you, show of hands, observe the majority of those Jewish holidays? Okay, just we don't have to take it off. I'm like, I can look. How many of you, okay, be honest. Some of them I know you observe. I'm sure you observe Passover, and I'm sure you observe Hanukkah. But the majority of those Jewish holidays, how many of you observe the majority of those Jewish holidays in a traditional way? Thank you for your honesty. Now let's go on to the Christian holidays. Okay, now I'm sure this is not a list. This should be a pretty comprehensive list of the holidays on the Christian calendar. Christmas, and you know what Christmas is the Christmas tide, the 25th of December. The solemnity of Mary. You said, what's the solemnity of Mary? 8 days after Jesus was born, he was circumcised. That's January the 1st. That's called the solemnity of Mary. And then you have the Epiphany, Palm Sunday, the Feast of Ascension. You have Easter Sunday. You have Feasts of Corpus Christi. You have a number of holidays. There are about 12 or 13 of them there. Those are all holidays on the Christian calendar. And by the way, that's not every holiday. You'll notice that it says there, some of you see on the Christian calendar, it says All Saints Day. You know what All Saints Day is? That's the day in the year that celebrates all the saints in the Christian calendar. But guess what? Each of the saints has their own day. So on the 14th of February, you're going to celebrate St. Valentine. And on March the 17th, you're going to celebrate St. Patrick. So even though there is one day called All Saints Day, which is a celebration of every single saint in the Christian pantheon of saints, each of these saints have their own special day. So apart from these holidays on the Christian calendar, if you celebrated each of the separate saints calendars, you'd be celebrating a lot more days. Instead of having 15, you'd have 25, 30, you'd have lots of holidays. Let's not belabor it. Go on to the Muslim holidays. These are all Abrahamic holidays. You see, there are a number of them. Ashura, the Feast of Eid, the entire month of Ramadan, which is not just one day, but 30 days. And that is observed by fasting every single day from sunrise to sunset and only eating after it gets dark. And then all the other holidays, all these are Islamic holidays. And you'll notice there are more Islamic holidays on the calendar than there seem to be Jewish holidays, and about the same number as there are Christian holidays. All right, go on a little bit further. If you happen to be Baha'i, which is a combination of different religions, you have, in addition, the Baha'i holidays, all listed there. If you are Mandaean, you have the Mandaean holidays. If you are Buddhist, you have the Buddhist holidays. If you are Hindu, Oh my God, Hindu has loads of holidays. Partly because Hindu has a lot of divinities. You've got to have a holiday for each divinity. So you see all these holidays here. There are a lot of gods in the Hindu calendar. So you have to have special days of holiness for all of them. And then you go on, you have Jain holidays and Sikh holidays and so forth. Now, if I were to ask Christian audiences or Muslim audiences or Buddhist audiences, how many of the holy days do you celebrate actually in your life? I would get the same reaction that I got to the question, how many Jewish holidays do you celebrate? A handful of you might say we celebrate 3 or 4 or 5, but I doubt that a majority of you would say you celebrate each and every single holiday, whether it's Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, or whatever. Okay. So now comes the question. Okay, so I've shown you all of the holidays, and I will stop the share and I'll go back to our screen here. By the way, you can refer to your own list later on. Okay, there we are. We're all back again. All right, so having said that holidays are times when we meet God, and having seen that each religion that takes religion seriously has a large number of occasions in which we can meet God, why don't we meet God anymore at the same frequency that we used to? Does someone want to tell me? I showed you the traditional holidays on a traditional Christian or Jewish or Muslim or Hindu calendar, but why don't most people observe all those holidays? Does someone want to tell me why? Can't be wrong on this. You can only express an opinion. Okay. Anybody want to tell me why we don't observe them?
We don't know about
Holidays aren't that important anymore. We don't have time for God anymore. You see, we don't take time in our modern world to meet with God. We think we can meet with God whenever we want, but the truth is, if you don't set aside special days consecrated to meeting and confronting and dealing with God, you're not going to do it. So what does our secular calendar look like? Very few of us observe the religious calendar anymore. I would say that for most Christians and Jews and Muslims and others, we don't celebrate very many religious calendars every day. I'm suggesting to you that's because religion isn't too important to us today. Now, if I told you the only way you confront God is through the religious calendar, and I tell you, we don't have religious calendars any day because religion isn't so important to us anymore, you can draw the following disturbing conclusion: God isn't that important to us anymore. Now, I don't know if you want to challenge me with that, but I would suggest to you that the reason religious holidays are not observed today is because the idea of meeting God, of confronting God, of experiencing God in time is just not that important today. Does anybody want to disagree with me? Go ahead, Neil. Go ahead. Take me to pieces. Okay, Neil, you're still muted. So okay, there you go.
Sorry, I almost hit leave meeting instead of unmute. Hey, I've been doing some parallel studying and discussing the concept of Imuna, Shuddha, and Das, and more of a concept of not being relegated to the actual holiday time, but just the constant mindfulness of belief and of that. So I don't want to derail your premise, but you don't set aside your time for God just for holidays.
Very good, Neil. I will tell you what I truly believe. If you can meet God anytime you choose, most of the time you won't meet God at all. If I can meet someone whenever I choose, they're always available. I'm never going to see them. I have to choose to meet with God. The person who says, I can find God here or there or anywhere in the world, it doesn't have to be a synagogue or a church. It doesn't have to be on a specific holiday. Anybody who says to you, I can meet God anywhere and everywhere, probably is not meeting God at all, or is only meeting them in times of crisis, Neil, when suddenly they face crisis and they feel a need to turn to God.
I don't agree. I agree with you that that's a popular premise. However, just the act of us having this Zoom meeting, you can be having this meeting and be with God In other words, that we are actually in right at the moment working with God because we're discussing, we're
Correct.
so
You-
I don't want to take you off where you're headed, but
no.
it's more of always having the belief.
Okay. You're making my point for me, Neil. We are talking about God now because we created between us a forum to talk about God. If we did not create this forum, we probably right now would not be talking about God. Okay. By creating this forum, by making the subject,
Jerry, when you're done.
Gary, I'll get
Jerry.
you. Oh, Jerry. By talking about God, by creating this forum in which God is the subject, we are creating, Neil, an opportunity to confront God.
Yeah,
But
but saying the Shema in the morning and in the evening.
all right, you're right. And I will go farther. You're right. God cannot be God should be met not just on holidays, Neil is saying. God should be met every single day. When I get up in the morning, I say a list of 6 or 7 prayers. I begin Modeh Ani. Then I say the prayer for the washing of the hands. And after I use the bathroom, there's a prayer for that. And then there's prayers for Torah study. So I have a whole retinue of prayers I say every day. You're right, Neil. I don't have to find a special place to meet God. My life is so structured around God. I meet him all the time. I'm like Tevye, I'm talking with God all the time, but not just talking with him, talking in a structured way. But if you do not do that, Neil, if you do not create time to say the Shema, to acknowledge God, to give thanks to God for waking up and giving you new life, chances are you won't think about him. If you don't think about him, you won't experience him. The whole point of holidays is even if you manage to get through your life on other times without thinking about God, without confronting God at every meal you eat, in every prayer you say, in everything you do from morning until night, if you don't confront God that way, hopefully you are at least confronting God on holidays. Okay. And the sad truth is that most people don't. And I'll prove it to you. Real quickly, and then I'm going to get off the subject. How many of you go to Shabbos services each and every Friday night and Saturday morning? How many of you? Okay, yeah, thank you, Esther. How many of you daven every day, morning, afternoon, and evening? Okay. How many of you observe every single religious holiday on the calendar, whether it's Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever? The truth of the matter is, most of us don't make the time to meet with God. If God is truly our lover, if God is truly the most important thing in our life, we would create every single moment we can to meet with God. I am suggesting to you the fact that we don't choose to meet with God regularly may mean that it is not as important to us. We don't give ourselves the time to encounter God in moments of holiness. Esther, you would raise your hand, so I'm going to pick on you here. Every time you or Jay go to synagogue, whether it's Friday night or Shabbos, do you experience God in your experience? Do you feel God's presence? Okay. And sometimes I know it may be more routine, sometimes it may not be as strong, but the truth is, Esther, Jay, and anybody else, whenever you make yourself available to God in the synagogue, whether it's Shabbat or it's a holiday, you feel God's presence, don't you? And those of you who are not Jewish, who celebrate other holidays, whether it's Christmas Eve or it's Easter or whatever it is, don't you feel when you celebrate those days in church or with family, don't you feel closer to God at those times, honestly, than you do at other times when you don't think about him? All I'm telling you is if God is important to you, you've got to create moments to confront him, to meet him. And I'm using him, obviously, in the general sense, but confront God, to meet God. In other words, God is not a casual experience. God is the ultimate reality of the universe. And if you are in dialogue, in existential dialogue with God, you are confronting God consistently. I don't know how many times I say when someone says, well, I'll see you next Thursday, I say automatically, Im Yirtzeh Hashem, God willing. I don't take it for granted. I don't say, I'll meet you next Thursday. God willing, I'll meet you Thursday. In other words, God permeates every aspect of my life. So now I'm going to take you on a journey through the holidays, okay? I'm going to take you through Leviticus. My comments would be just as pertinent if it were I were discussing Christianity or Islam. But since my subject is the book of Leviticus and is the Hebrew Bible, I'm going to tell you how the Hebrew Bible creates regular opportunities in time for you to meet with God. You don't have to worry about it. It's on a calendar. You can meet with God regularly. All you have to do is get a Jewish calendar and follow it, okay? Get a Jewish calendar, get a regular calendar. It has all the dates on there. It has all the holidays. Every Shabbat, every seventh day, the Shabbat is listed. Meet with God regularly on Shabbos, on the holidays, at least on those days, and your life will be completely changed. You will be a more religious person. And the same applies to those of you who follow Christian or Muslim holidays. You want to be more godly? Follow the calendar. Meet with God, encounter God, give yourself an opportunity to experience God in your daily life. Now, let me tell you how we do it in the Jewish calendar, in the Jewish holidays, okay, which is the subject that we are discussing. There are 5 separate times in the Torah when the Jewish holidays are specifically mentioned. 5 separate times. Now, some of you might think, well, okay, that makes sense. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. It must be mentioned one time in each of the 5 books of the Torah. But the truth is, none of the holidays are mentioned at all in the book of Genesis. The Torah hasn't even started yet. The Torah doesn't start until the book of Exodus. So I'm giving you the 5 times. The Jewish holidays are mentioned 2 times in the book of Exodus. And in Exodus, they are mentioned just very, very briefly. They just tell you what the holidays are, what days they occur in. 2 times. And I'll send out a notice to you. But in Exodus 23, verses 14 to 17, 3 verses. And in Exodus 34, 18 to 26, okay, 9 verses. That's where you can find the holidays mentioned in the book of Exodus. Now, the big section where the holidays are mentioned are the portion we're studying right now, Leviticus. You want to know where the holidays are really studied and really digested. That's why I gave you, by the way, the reading in Sacks this week. This is the book of Leviticus. It is chapter 23, verses 1 through 44. You have not 5 or 6 verses or 8 verses. You have 44 verses that concentrate only on the holidays. So the big mention of the holidays is in the book of Leviticus. 2 times in Exodus, a big time in Leviticus, and then it's mentioned 2 more times, once in the book of Numbers, where you're just told what to bring for an offering. That just tells you if you're going to the temple, what kind of offering you bring and how you will bring it. And one time in the book of Deuteronomy where it talks about the social aspect of the holiday in the life of Israel. So 5 times in the Torah, the holidays are specifically mentioned. 2 briefly in Exodus, 1 in Numbers that talks about the offerings, and 1 in Deuteronomy that talks about the social aspects of the holiday. But the main section of the Torah where we deal with the holidays is the book of Leviticus. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a look at the book of Leviticus, okay? I'm going to ask, you don't have to turn there, I'm going to read this for you. I'm going to ask questions as we go. Not a lot of reading. My wife left the room to take a phone call so I could get by with reading a few verses before she jumps on me. This is the way it begins. It says, chapter 23, verses 1 to 3. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the Lord has appointed festivals that you are to designate as holy assemblies. These are my appointed festivals." Okay, so that's the introduction. And then how does it begin? For in 6 days labor may be done, and on the 7th day is a day of complete rest, a holy convocation. You shall not do any manner of work. It is the Sabbath for the Lord in all your dwelling places. So the list of the holidays begin with what? Sabbath. Okay. And then after the Sabbath, all the other holidays of the Jewish year are listed. Why does it begin with Shabbat? Because Shabbat is the key to understanding the holidays. If you understand Shabbat, you understand all the Jewish holidays, okay? So let's make sure you understand Shabbat. Why do we Jews observe Shabbat? Okay, simple question. We've discussed that a long time ago. What is the purpose of our observing Shabbat? Anybody want to tell me? Okay, Jerry, go ahead.
I thought it was the parallel regarding God's creative days, the 6 days, and then the seventh day he rested. So
Perfect.
we are honoring our Creator by following the Shabbat.
Very good. We are becoming holy by association. Jerry is saying in a very nice, straightforward way, on Shabbat, we become holy by association. What are we associating with on Shabbat? Well, Jerry told us. On 6 days, the Lord created heaven and earth, and on the seventh day, he ceased from work and rested. Therefore, God sanctified and hallowed the seventh day and called it Shabbat. When we human beings observe the Shabbat, we become holy in relationship to God by association. How do we do that, Jerry? How, by our observing Shabbat, do we become holy by association?
Could I just back up for a moment?
Sure, go right ahead.
When you were asking about meeting God. So I was going to comment that with the first man and woman, apparently God spoke to them in the breezy part of the day. Then when they had sinned, they were hiding themselves. And so I still kind of feel like hiding myself from God. And when there's the holidays and the meetings, I go because I know I should go.
Very good.
That would be my.
Jerry said it perfectly. Most of the time we're hiding, okay? Just like the first man and woman. Most of the time we're hiding from God. But Jerry is saying, but I don't want to hide from God. When I want to meet God, how do I meet God? God created a day, 1 day in 7, the seventh day, and he made that day and he called it Shabbat. By the way, what date does the Shabbat occur on the calendar, Jerry? What date?
You mean the day of the week, you mean?
Yeah, well, not day of the week. What calendar day does it occur on?
Oh,
It's a trick question. It occurs every 7 days.
oh.
Unlike the holidays, which all have dates on the Hebrew calendar, Shabbat occurs every 7 days. You don't need a Hebrew calendar to understand Shabbat. Hopefully, if you remember when the last Shabbat is, you count 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th day Shabbat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th day Shabbat. Shabbat is not a calendar day. Shabbat is a day that was not created by man on the calendar. It was created by God. God created the world, and he said, because he ceased from work and rested on the seventh day, he said, all human beings will stop their purposeful creation, will stop being creators, will stop manipulating the world. And every seventh day, they're going to stop and they're going to recognize me as God. They're going to worship me. Okay. Every day you celebrate, every Shabbat that you celebrate, you are re-meeting God. You are, as Jerry puts it, not hiding anymore. You're saying, God, I'm here. I'm here. It's Shabbat.
Are we mimicking God? Are we
Say-
mimicking God? Are we mimicking what he did on the seventh day?
By doing what, Neil?
In other words, by observing Shabbat, are we mimicking what God did?
Well, we are not mimicking him, Neil, in the sense that I can't create a world. God is pretty unique. God is holy in a way that I will never be holy, Neil. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I can't create a fly, which is why I try not to destroy any of them. God can create everything. God, out of nothing, created everything, Neil. If you say that on Shabbat I emulate God, I would tell you I can't do what God has done. I cannot create the world. Okay? So by resting, by not working, I'm associating myself with God. That's what I meant by holiness by association. I'm not being God. I'm not doing what God does. I can't do that. I'm not capable of it. But I am associating myself with God. I'm saying, Neil, just as God rested on the seventh day and did not function in the world, but sat back and observed the world, when I do that, Neil, I guess I'm not imitating God, but I am remembering God and associating myself with God. That's what I would say. Okay. So am I imitating God? No. Am I remembering God to the extent that I stop fidgeting with the world, as Neil is saying, that I stop trying to create and be a creator in the sense that I stop trying to create and I just am one with the world. I'm a creature bound to the same God as every other creature is. Yeah, I'm associating myself with God, Neil. I am holy by association. Now, that is a function of Shabbat. Okay, all of you understand. When you keep Shabbat each week, you are associating yourself with God. I know that sounds crazy. How can a mere finite human being associate with God? It sounds laughable. Where's the chutzpah you're saying? Rabbi, by what chutzpah do you say you're associating with God? Well, I don't mean I'm imitating God or like God or anything like that. I just mean that in remembrance of what God did when he created the world and when he rested on the seventh day, I am, Neil, associating myself with God by resting on the seventh day. Okay, that is what I am doing. That is called holiness by association. But Neil is talking about another kind of holiness, and I want to refer to Neil now. Neil says there is another way we can become holy, not through association, but through action. Listen to me. You can be holy not merely by associating yourself with God, your own actions can make you holy. Does someone want to explain to me how actions can make you holy? We understand association by observing Shabbos and resting and remembering God and being at one with the world and not manipulating the world and being creatures. We associate with God's world. But how can we be holy by our actions? Anybody want to give me that one? Go ahead, Lori, and then Eileen.
Through mitzvot and tzedakah,
All right.
when we
All right.
give to others. And
when it comes to mitzvot, we can be holy just like God is holy. If God is generous, if God provides for the wayfarer, the poor, the orphan, the widow, if God is compassionate and remembers those who are in need, we can, Lori says, we can emulate God by doing the same thing in our life. Is that what you're saying, Lori? By emulating God, by being compassionate, by doing good things in the world, we, by our actions, become holy. Is that what you're saying?
yes.
That's correct. All right. We can be holy by our deeds, by what we do, by the way we live, we can be holy. Now, explain to me how this idea of being holy through our actions, explain to me how it applies to the Sabbath and the holidays. Lori is correct. We can only be holy through our actions. But dealing now with the Sabbath and the holidays, how can we be holy through our actions? Does anybody want to tell me that? How can you go from merely associating? All right, and let's see. I think Eileen had, and then I will go turn to Barbara. Eileen, go ahead. I saw your.
Other than without even thinking about, gee, I'm associating with God. You just do it. You just help people when they need help, simply because they need it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. That is, you associate with God in actions by doing those actions which we describe as godly. Is that what you're saying?
And, right, basically, and then not think, oh, gee, I'm doing my good deed. I'm associating. You just do it.
You do it. You are creating holiness yourself. What Eileen is saying is very important. We are holiness creators. Listen to what I'm saying. We are holiness creators. We human beings can create holiness in the world. As Eileen says, we don't necessarily do it because we, are doing it for whenever we create holiness in the world, we are a source of holiness. Okay. Barbara, you were going to say something.
I was going to say that when we follow the traditions of the holiday, we're being holy.
Okay. So Barbara is answering my specific question. I said, how can we be holy in time? And Barbara is saying to us, to all of us, by following the traditions, by observing, by sanctifying these holy days, by observing these holy days, these festive days, we can be a source of holiness. Is that what you're saying, Barbara? Good. Okay, that's what I want you. It is not merely we are holy by association, by doing what we do to observe the holidays. Barbara is saying we are a source of holiness ourselves. Barbara, can you give me a concrete example of that on any of the holidays? How we, by observing the holiday, we are a source of holiness? Can you think of anything?
Well, the one that comes, I mean, there's so many different ones. Passover, the Seder.
Give me Passover. How do we become a source of holiness on Passover?
Well, we have a Seder,
right,
and we follow the dietary traditions of Passover, and read the Haggadah.
Okay.
That's one holiday, and then
all right, and Barbara could expand on that. How do we make the Passover holy? By gathering together with our families and holding a Passover Seder and telling the story of Passover. Okay, those of you who gather every year on Passover for a Seder and forget about the Seder and just eat, the sort of foods, and you don't do any of the religions, you're not doing it right. Okay, you're not doing it right. If you skip the Seder, if you don't do the Seder, if you don't tell the story of Passover, if you don't ask the questions which enable you to relate the story of Passover, you are not doing it. You are not observing Passover. If you are in a sukkah on Sukkot, and you haven't invited guests to your sukkah and guests to your table to invite them to eat and join with you in celebrating the holiday, you're not doing the holiday, right, Barbara? To do the holiday, you must actually do something. You must be a source of blessing by observing the traditions of the holiday. The holidays are the program by which you become a source of holiness in the world. What Barbara is saying, and I'm not putting words in her mouth, what she is saying is, by Jews doing the holidays in the way they are supposed to do them, they are not merely holy by association, by their deeds, by their actions, by the way they celebrate the holiday, they are sources in the world of holiness. Okay, you see why it's so important? If you observe holidays, but you do not think about their meaning or whatnot, and you do not do the actions associated with them, it has no meaning. How many of you observed Labor Day by not working? Not by honoring labor, not by honoring the working man. You just don't work. How many of you have observed Veterans Day by having a holiday and having a picnic, not by our honoring or going to ceremonies that honor our veterans? How many holidays do we celebrate where we don't really celebrate the holiday? It's an excuse to get together with family and friends and eat and schmooze and have a long day weekend and go get off of work, but we're not observing the holiday. That is not observing a holiday. You want to observe a holiday, observe it, do it, fulfill its requirements. And if you observe a holiday for that reason, the holiday will mean something entirely different to you. Guarantee it. Okay. Those of you who go out on the 31st of October and go trick-or-treating and go house to house to collect candy, you are observing a day called a celebration called All Hallows Eve, the eve of All Hallows Day, because the next day is All Saints Day or All Hallows Day. If you are observing Halloween by going out trick-or-treating or blowing up your neighbor's pumpkins, you're not celebrating Halloween. You're not doing it, not even close. Even if you go to a Halloween party at Bob for Apples, you're not doing it. That is not Halloween. If you observe Thanksgiving and you don't think at all about this country and its history and thankfulness and the pilgrims and sharing with the natives who helped them through that first winter, you are not observing the holiday of Thanksgiving. Don't kid yourself. Just because you go through certain actions, you eat turkey, you eat cranberry, you eat whatever it is you eat, that's not observing the holiday. Observing the holiday is observing the meaning of the holiday, and by observing the meaning, becoming a source of holiness. You see what I'm trying to say? Now I'm going to teach you something that's amazing, and you'll thank me years later because I taught this to you, okay? How are the holidays related to the Shabbat? Shabbat is God initiated. God creates the world. He rests on the seventh day, and he tells us, you human beings, I, God, created the world. I created everything. And then I rested on the seventh day. If you want to associate with me every seventh day, remember that you're not just creators, you're creatures. Remember every seventh day to stop doing whatever you're doing. Don't go to the swap meet. Don't go to the mall. Don't go about your business like every other day. Take Shabbat and make it special. By doing that, you remember what I, God, did when I rested on the seventh day. The holidays are the way in which we Jews take these holy moments and we make them sources of holiness. We become holy not by association, but by our actions. Now, here's the amazing thing. How many days are there from Shabbat to Shabbat? Anybody want to tell me? That's an easy question. Go ahead, Barbara. How many days from Shabbat to Shabbat?
There's 6 in between, and the 7th day you rest.
Yeah, every 7th day, right? The magic number, the holy number, by the way, I'm going to give you, disclosing my secret. The holy number is 7. Just remember 7, you got it, okay? 7 is the holy number. You don't have to be a magician. 7 is a holy number. It's not a natural number, okay? 7 is, the days of a week are not a natural phenomenon. The days of a month from one moon cycle to another is a natural phenomenon. The days of the earth circling the sun is a year. That's a natural cycle. A week is not a natural cycle. God created the week, and the week is completely arbitrary because God designates the week as a time of holiness, period. We Jews cannot create the world in 7 days. But do you know how many Jewish holidays there are? Do you know how many Jewish holidays in the Bible there are? Anybody want to guess? How many of you would be surprised if I told you 7? Now, let's go back to the shared screen, and I'll show you now the genius of the Jewish calendar. Share screen, okay. Share. Okay, I'm going back. Okay, I'm going back to the Jewish holidays, okay? There are only 7 Jewish holidays that are mentioned in the Torah. Let's review the 7 Jewish holidays, okay? The first 3 holidays are called pilgrimage festivals, right? That's when the Jewish people go and gather together, assemble in holy assembly. What are those 3 days? Passover, right? Shavuot and Sukkot, okay? Passover, the deliverance of the Jews from Egypt, okay? It's one holiday. Shavuot, the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, 2 holidays. Sukkot is a day in which we dwell in the sukkah for 7 days and we remember how we wandered through the wilderness. A 3rd holiday. Those are 3 holidays. Does everybody agree those are 3 holidays? Now let's add on the 2 high holidays. What are the 2 high holidays? Okay, everybody's mouthing it. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? They're in the Bible. In this chapter, just go back to chapter 23. Every one of these 7 holidays I'm mentioning are there. All right, so what are the holidays? Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur. That's 5 holidays, right? Okay. Where are the extra 2 holidays? Someone want to tell me? I told you that the Jewish holidays are just a mirror of Shabbat. Tell me where the other two holidays are. You've got the 3 pilgrimage festivals, that's 3. The 2 high holidays, that's 5. Where are the other 2 holidays? Anybody want to look at that list and tell me where the other holidays are? Marlene, go ahead.
Purim?
Purim is a minor holiday. It doesn't
Oh,
occur,
minor.
it doesn't occur in the Torah, Marlene. You can look for Purim all you want. You got to go to the book of Esther. It's not in the Torah, okay? And by the way, just so no one says it, the same thing is true with Hanukkah. Hanukkah
Right.
is not mentioned in the Bible at all. So don't look for Purim and don't look for Hanukkah in the Hebrew Bible. God never said they're holy days. They're not days on which work is prohibited. All the major 7 holidays are days on which menial work is prohibited. So we've got the 2 high holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Passover, Sukkot, and Shavuot. When are the other 2 days in which we have no work? Go ahead, Barbara. This is tricky now. Go ahead. What do you think? Anybody?
Yes, me.
Go ahead.
Tisha B'Av.
Tisha B'Av is a great day, but again, it's not mentioned in the Bible. Tisha B'Av does not occur in the Bible. It is a fast day, but it's a historic fast day that has to do with events long after the Bible ended. So Tisha B'Av and the other fast days, the other 3 other fast days in the Jewish year, are not Jewish holidays. And by the way, on Tisha B'Av, you can do work, Carol. On Tisha B'Av, I should have, but on Tisha B'Av, it's not a major holiday. It's not even a holiday, okay? I told you there are 7 holidays paralleling the 7 days of the week. What are the other?
Did we not mention Shabbat?
Huh?
Did we not mention Shabbat?
We didn't mention Shabbat, but I told you that the 7 holidays mirror Shabbat. So if Shabbat is 7 days, there are 7 holidays that correspond to the 7 days of Shabbat of a week.
What
are the
about
2?
Shavuot?
Shavuot is one of the 5. I said Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur. That's 5. Give me the last 2, Eileen.
What about Reshit Katzir?
Which one?
Guessing.
How about
Reshit
Katzir?
Torah, I would say.
Yeah, Reshit Katzir, Eileen, is just another name for Shavuot. Let's see, Reshit Katzir, first fruits, collecting. Yeah, that corresponds. Reshit Katzir, the first of the first fruits. That's Shavuot. Even though it looks like a separate holiday, it's not a separate holiday.
What about Simchat Torah?
Now you're getting close. You thought that Sukkot was one holiday. Guess what? Sukkot is not one holiday. Sukkot is not really one holiday. Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot are separate holidays, but there is another day that occurs in the month of Tishrei. What holiday occurs that has to be added? What holiday that occurs?
Tisha B'Av?
No, Tisha B'Av is a fast day that occurs in August. What holiday occurs in September that we haven't counted yet? Jay, go ahead.
Oh,
Shemini Atzeret.
Shmini Atzeret. Very good. You might have thought it's just the 8th day of Shavuot, not Sukkot. Not true. Shmini Atzeret is its own holiday. Okay, so now here we go. Almost there. Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. You're still missing a day.
Rabbi, what about the last day of Passover?
The last day of Passover is just considered one of the days of Passover, but you're on the right track. The first day of Passover, or the first day of Passover, is a separate holiday. Okay, I'm telling you something most Jews don't know. You thought Passover was from the 1st to the 7th day, didn't you? 7 days you shall eat matzah, etc. Not true. There are 2 separate holidays. One occurs on what we would call the first day of Passover. It is called the Pesach. That is the holiday when the Jews offered a sacred lamb. When you sit at the table on the Passover night and you don't eat lamb. You can't do that, but you celebrate the Passover and you say, this was the night that we left Egypt. That's a own holiday. Right after Passover, coinciding with the beginning of Passover, the next 6 days, the entire 7-day period is not called Pesach, it is called Chag HaMatzot, the festival of unleavened bread. Believe it or not, Passover and the 7 days called the festival of unleavened bread are two separate holidays. Passover celebrates going out of Egypt. That was the night we left Egypt. We ate the Paschal meal. God appeared. He passes over our houses and he tells us, get out of Egypt. But for 7 days, a separate holiday is called Chag HaMatzot, during which we are not to eat matzah for any one of those days. It is a separate day. So now you've got the 7 holidays. The first day of Passover is called Pesach. The rest of the days are called Chag HaMatzot, 2. Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks, 3. Sukkot, 4. Okay. Rosh Hashanah, 5. Yom Kippur, 6. Okay. Shmini Atzeret is the 7th day. Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret. Okay. So the 5 again. Pesach, the Chag HaMatzot, Chag HaShavuot, Chag HaShavuot, Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Shmini Atzeret. Okay, 7 days. 7 days. Okay. And by the way, those of you who say, "What about Simplest Torah?" Simplest Torah, it doesn't really exist. Simplest Torah is the day we invented. It's a day for finishing reading the Torah, but it's always celebrated on the 2nd day after Shmini Atzeret. It's not a separate holiday. What does this mean? Now, let me try and bring this all to bear. And with this, I'm going to try and end it. 7 times during the year, we don't have to emulate God's resting. We create holidays in which we remember God, in which we declare our history, and in which we actively become like God and create moments of holiness. If you observe Pesach Seder, if you observe the days of Pesach and you don't eat any unleavened bread for all 7 days of the Passover holiday, if you observe the holiday of Shavuot on the 6th day of Sivan, if you observe Rosh Hashanah on the 1st day of Tishrei, if you observe Yom Kippur on the 10th day of Tishrei, if you observe Sukkot on the 1st to the 7th day of Tishrei, or 15th to the 21st day, and if you observe Shmini Atzeret on the 8th day, you have now celebrated 7 days. Every single one of those holidays gives you a chance to do something holy. Every single one of them. If you don't observe Pesach, you miss the opportunity of doing something holy. If you don't sit in the synagogue and receive the Torah every Shavuot, you miss the opportunity to celebrate the day God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. If you do not sit in a sukkah and invite guests and celebrate and welcome them into your sukkah and shake the lulav and the etrog, you are not creating moments of holiness. If you go into Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the first day of the 7th month, you are not doing tshuva. You are not bringing holiness into the world. If you do not fast on Yom Kippur and atone for your sins, you are not bringing holiness into the world. If you observe all of those 7 holidays the way they are properly observed, then in addition to Shabbat, you are bringing holiness 7 additional times. Now, more than 7, because here's the last fun thing about it. Do you know how, according to the Bible, you know how many days the holiday of Passover is celebrated? According to the Bible, how many days do we celebrate Passover? Not the way we do it here. Anybody know? Go ahead. 7. How many days do you celebrate the holiday of Shavuot? 7. Okay. It's not only that there are 7 holidays, but the 2 major holidays that last multiple days. Passover and Shavuot each last 7 days. Again, the number 7. When do all the holidays in the month of Tishrei occur? What month in the calendar is the month of Tishrei? When Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret occurred. You know what month that is on the Jewish calendar? 7. It's the 7th month. Now, you want to take days and weeks and months and translate them into years? Every 7 years, we are supposed to observe Shemitah. We are supposed to let the land lie fallow. So we translate 7 into the calendar of years. Every 7th year, we do not monkey with the land. We do not interfere with the land. We let the land lie fallow. After 7 years of 7 Sabbaths, 7 times 7, 7 sabbatical years of 7 years, in the 49th year, the year after that is called the Jubilee, the 50th year. 7 is the magic number. You want to live holy lives, live according to 7. Make the 7th day holy and observe it as best you can. Observe the 7 biblical festivals, at least. Observe the major festival, the festivals of duration, at least for the 7 days. We observe it one more day, okay? The 7th month, make it holy with the calendar, and then follow the cycle of the years. If you do that, you have changed your life, okay? You have changed your life. You cannot do what I just told you to do and not become a rather observant Jew. If you keep the Shabbos, and we'll talk about what I mean in just a second, and you keep the holidays, you are an observant Jew. Now, you're going to say to me, Rabbi, that's not true. I keep the Sabbath, but I don't always go to synagogue on Sabbath. I keep the Sabbath, but I don't cease from work. I sometimes go to work and do things. I keep the Sabbath, but I sometimes drive, and you're not supposed to drive or create, manipulate the world. Depending on how traditional you are, you can be a chassid, you can be ultra-Orthodox, or you can be regular. I'm going to tell you the regular way you keep the holidays. Okay, you listening? Every single one of you. You don't have to be like me. You don't have to not drive on Shabbos anymore. You don't have to go, and attend services regularly, and you don't have to. Here's the way you do it. What are the ways in which you bring Shabbat and the holidays into your life? Magic ways. Number 1, consecrate time. Set aside those times, those Sabbaths and those holidays, and make them moments when you can meet God. Use those. You have a lover's rendezvous. Just like they tell married couples they should create a date night once every week. You should all create a rendezvous with God. Once every week, you should spend time with God. And then if you're Jewish, on these 7 holidays throughout the year, you should create time for God. So first of all, sanctify time. Then, don't do it alone. Bring your family together, okay? You got family, you got friends, invite people to your home. How do you celebrate Shabbat? Not just by resting, not just by not working. You do it by inviting friends and neighbors and family to sit in your home. Some of you I've shared Shabbat with. We've celebrated Shabbat. But some of you I've celebrated other holidays. How do you do it? It's not just sanctifying the time. It's inviting people to share it with you. When I spend Shabbat with family or with friends or with congregants, my Shabbat is special. My holiday is special, okay? When I do it and I incorporate special foods, like a challah on Shabbat or matzah on Passover, or I eat certain foods like on Passover or the other holidays, I'm using food as well. So I'm bringing together sacred time, family and friends, sacred foods and sacred rituals, okay? What else do I do in sacred? I say special words. I may say special prayers. Those of you who've observed Shabbat, when you observe the Shabbat, what's the first thing you do to welcome Shabbat? You light Shabbos candles and you say to God, thank you for giving us the Sabbath. You welcome the Sabbath with a cup of wine over your table, Kiddush table, and you invite people to sing and to welcome the Shabbat angels together with you. Family. words, experience, intimacy. Do you know, according to Jewish law, for scholars, the time that is specially reserved for intimacy for scholars is Shabbos? A man and a woman have a chance to be together, it should be on Shabbos, right? That's the one kind of natural creation, natural creativity you're allowed to endorse. Shabbat is a time to renew our relationships with the people that we are closest to, our spouses, our partners. That's also a way. Going for a walk and visiting people. If we're not going to invite them to our home for a meal or to sit in our sukkah, we're going to go out and we're going to visit them, and we're going to pay Shabbos visits to them. Doing mitzvot. Every Jewish holiday is connected with a mitzvah, whether it's giving food on certain holidays or sending gifts or portions to one another. Every holiday is connected with going out and doing something holy. What I'm trying to say is the following. If you celebrate holidays casually and you let them go by and you don't think about them, and they're just other days for you to have your day off and to relax, you're missing the point. But if you use the holidays as meeting points for God, if they are rendezvous with you and your lover, God, if you use them as rendezvous, then you have captured the essence of the Jewish idea of sanctifying time. We can meet God, you're right, Neil, any time we want, every morning, and I try and meet God daily. But at the very least, some days I get busy, some days, I have to do my schedule, I have to go, I have to be somewhere. But at least for Shabbat and the holidays, Neil, I can say this time is reserved. I don't make any other dates on that date. I don't set up anything else special on that day. This is a reserved date for me and God. This is our meeting date. This is the time when we're together. Carol, you had a question. Go ahead.
Because our grandchildren are not necessarily being raised Jewish, we take the opportunity at the Jewish holidays also to tell the stories of why we're celebrating it. And Craig is phenomenal at bringing in history and stories, but those stories are really important, and we find that they remember some of the stories.
Oh, they absolutely do. And there is a moment of creating holiness when you bring them together for a holiday or for Shabbat, and you tell stories or you talk about the Torah portion or whatever you do, you are building Jewish identity, Carol and Craig. Even if our children are married to other people who are not Jewish, we create opportunities through our holidays, through our celebrations, through our Shabbat. We create living moments to instruct and continue the story of the Jewish people. It is a vehicle by which we continue on Jewish tradition. You want Jewish tradition to continue? Celebrate holidays. Invite your family. Invite friends, Jewish, non-Jewish, but tell the stories. Keep the memory alive. Excellent, Carol. Excellent. Go ahead, Carol.
Can you say that anytime you think of God, you're being holy?
Yeah, but I'm going to have to call you up and say, Carol, did you think of God today? Did you think of God today? I'm going to become really obnoxious to you, because the truth is, in between the holidays and when it's not Shabbat, I'm going to call Carol up and I'm going to say, Carol, did you think about God this morning? Did you say the Modeh Ani? Did you say a blessing?
Oh, wait a minute. Why would you be calling me? Are you checking up on me? I mean,
no, you probably forgot. Did you say hamotzi when you ate your meal? Did you start your meal with bread? Carol, if you're going to remember God today, every time you eat a piece of bread, you got to say the hamotzi. If you forgot to say hamotzi, you forgot about God.
I'm saying whenever you do think of God, at the holidays, when you're with family, when you're doing a mitzvah, all these things that you're telling us we have to do, you are actually thinking about God.
Correct. If you do not do those things, though, Carol,
if you don't do them, then you're not being holy.
You're not thinking about God. Yes, that is true. If you are not thinking about God on a daily basis, and you could observe the holidays and you can observe Shabbat, but it may be that you're like me, Carol, that during the week you get caught up and you have other things in your life, right?
Of course.
You honestly say that there's not a day that goes by when you don't think about God?
I don't know. I have never thought about whether I think about God daily or
Okay.
not.
But the truth
But-
is, I
But
wouldn't, go ahead.
I'm just saying that thinking about God and doing something about it at the same time would be the ultimate holiness.
That is true. And if you could be that person who always thought about God in every action you did, every time you ate, every time you experienced something, every time you celebrated, or not just celebrated, you experienced a daily miracle. If you could be that way, you would be a righteous person, Carol. Very few of us, even the great Tzaddiks, are that righteous. I'll tell you, even the ultra-Orthodox, if they didn't have their regular prayers and rituals, would not think about God. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they would. It's hard to think about God constantly. Okay. I'm telling you, we don't think about God enough. If I believed that Carol and all of you had another way to daily think about God every single day and remember him and give thanks to him for the blessings he gives you each and every day, then maybe you don't have to observe all the Shabbases and the holidays. If you can remember and give thanks and praise and acknowledge God every single day of your life, Carol, then you're right. You don't need these special days. But the truth is, most of us can't do that. Most of us need these days. Go ahead, Barbara. Mm-hmm.
Wait, I'm trying to get it.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're there.
What about all the other holidays that that are on the calendar, like Lag BaOmer and Tu B'Shvat, and what are they?
We call those minor holidays, not minor because they're not important. Holocaust Remembrance Day, Israel Independence Day. But in comparison, Barbara, with the major seven, the biblical seven, the 7 days that God himself commanded us in chapter 23 of the book of Leviticus to observe, those holidays are extra. That's the dressing. That's the extra. That's above and beyond. If you can observe all those holidays, great. If you planted trees last week or ate a fresh fruit in honor of the holiday of Tu B'Shvat, Mazel Tov. I doubt if many of you even knew that last week was Tu B'Shvat. If I told you that last Thursday was Tu B'Shvat, you say, what? What's Tu B'Shvat? I didn't know it was Tu B'Shvat. If you can do that, Barbara, the more you do, the better. The more you can observe, the better. But at the very least, the basic seven, Barbara. Sabbath and the basic seven. If you had to make a choice, observe Shabbos and the basic seven, and then anything extra is blessing beyond that. Go ahead, Erwin. And then Joseph.
Okay, so I'm thinking about secular holidays. I'm thinking you brought up Veterans Day, you brought up Thanksgiving. Those are days where you get together with friends and family.
Correct.
You share, you break bread with them.
Correct.
You might go out and help others.
Good.
Who are in need.
Good.
But you don't necessarily think of God. But you do all these things which are godly.
Right, because they're not religious holidays, Erwin. Thanksgiving is not a religious holiday.
That's my point. Why don't they count?
Huh? Why don't they
count? Why
wouldn't
they count?
Why
don't they count?
They do
because
count.
If you do all those good things.
If you do everything you say, and in addition to that, Erwin, if in addition to doing that, bringing together family and friends and celebrating and doing good things, maybe like going to a soup kitchen to work on Thanksgiving. If you do all that, but you don't tell the story of the first Thanksgiving, and you don't remember that Thanksgiving was a time when people thanked God for the first harvest, it's not a religious holiday. I mean, it only counts as a religious holiday if you bring God in. Those people who bring God into Thanksgiving, it counts.
What about the part of doing good?
Doing good is important, but it's not a religious holiday. Doing good is not the end of the religious holiday. You've got to tie doing good, Erwin, to God. Here's what I'm saying. Just doing good altruistically. I'm going out and I'm going to help. I have a very nice home. I live comfortably. My family has all the fixings for Thanksgiving. I'm going to go out and I'm going to work at a kitchen, home shelter. I'm going to serve food for Thanksgiving. You can do that, and that is all worthy. But if you do that with the thought just of giving others benefits that you have, and you don't bring God into it, it's not a religious holiday. You've got to incorporate God into it. If you don't incorporate God into Thanksgiving, if you don't incorporate God into Veterans Day, if you don't bring God into, I don't even know, St. Patrick's Day or St. Valentine's Day, if it's just a day to send Valentines or just a day to wear green, it is not a religious holiday. What makes a religious holiday religious is it is a time for you, Erwin, to meet God. You can meet God on Thanksgiving. You're absolutely right. And if you observe Thanksgiving correctly, Thanksgiving will be a religious holiday. It will be a time to thank God. You know the old song, we gather together to ask the Lord's blessing. He hastens and chastens his will to make known. We gather together. For me, it's always a religious holiday. And when all the years I was a rabbi here, all throughout the years here in Santa Clarita, every Thanksgiving I went to join my Catholic and my Protestant and sometimes Baha'i and sometimes Muslim clergy. And we always had an interfaith Thanksgiving service. That service, Erwin, was religious, okay? If you're asking me, can you celebrate Thanksgiving without bringing God into it? You can, but it's no longer a religious holiday. It's a national holiday. If you celebrate 4th of July and you feel pride, Erwin, that this country has lasted for 200 and some odd years, it is a national holiday. But if you recognize the providence that God created a group of astounding men and women at one point of time that created a unique experiment here on earth that gave the world democracy, you turn that secular day, that national holiday, into a religious holiday. I am telling you, try and turn as many times you can into religious days. You want to live a religious life, live a religious life.
Don't forget about Joseph. Joseph had his
Thank you.
Joseph, I'm sorry. Yes, just go ahead.
Rabbi, I remember when we were speaking about Yom Kippur, that asking for atonement, asking God for forgiveness, you prayed out loud, audibly, spoken words. In the days that you meet God, that you want to find time to meet with God and commune with God, whether it be the morning, the night, every day, or the special holidays, should it always be in audibly spoken language?
It should be if you can. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you something else, Joseph. Prayer should always be audible. When I get up in the morning and I make a blessing, I could say the blessing just in my head. If I say it in my head, I say it audibly. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher yitzaret ha'adam b'chachma, u'v'ravo nikavim chalolim galui v'yadu lifnei chisechu v'odech. And I could go on and on. I've memorized them. I don't need a text anymore. They are they're imprinted in me. Any Orthodox Jew, by the way, could do the same thing. Okay, you don't really need a prayer text. I can do the Shema, all prepare. To me, it's second. It's to me, Hebrew is the language that, in addition to being a language that binds me with other Jews, is a language that binds me to God. And I use the language when I speak, whether it's a blessing or whether it's something else, prayer, I speak. And it concentrates me. It focuses me. Not only do I speak, but when I go to say the motzi on Shabbos, I gather the two challahs in my hand and I'm holding them. So I say, I'm saying this blessing over these two pieces of bread. Focus, intention, that's what it takes. Okay, tonight we have talked about Shabbat and the holidays. We're going to turn next week to something we do even more frequent maybe than the holidays. That's eating. I don't know about you, but I eat at least, well, some days I only eat a meal or two a day, depends, especially when I wake up or how big a meal I have. But I usually eat 3 times a day, regular meals, and then I eat all kinds of food in between. If every time I eat a meal or every time I enjoy something that gives me pleasure or sustains me, if every time I eat that, I think about it, give thanks to God for it, and say the appropriate words and do the appropriate rituals, I am doing something which on a daily basis, as Carol was talking, it daily sanctifies my life. How does my life become holy? Because every single act of eating is now a religious act. Every time I eat is a religious act. I'm going to teach you next week how to turn the act of eating into a holy act. You can find God in Shabbos and holidays. You can find him during the regular day too. That's a little harder, but you can find him every time you eat. If you don't take eating for granted, sometimes I do. I'm so hungry, I wake up and I eat something. I say, oh my God, I forgot to say the blessing. I didn't do this. But if every time you eat, you are conscious of the fact that you are able to eat and sustain yourself because God provided the wherewithal for you to buy food and have food and not go hungry like many people in the world do. If every act of eating is an act of thanking God for sustaining you and giving you the ability to survive, then that becomes a holy act too. And that's what we're going to cover next week. Thank you all. I preached a little. I'm going to just turn off stop the recording. Yeah, I got it.